Howdy, Immortalium here. Today I'm reviewing a series called Andromeda Stories. Now, if you remember, I reviewed a series called Tetera. It was written by a mangaka called Kaiko Takemiya. She did the artwork for this series. And the story, the guy who was in charge of making the story, is a guy by the name of Ryu Mitsushi. And he is best known for his science fiction novel. He was a science fiction novelist. Generally considered one of the great science fiction novels of all time. 10 Billion Noons and 100 Billion Nights. So there was a lot of talent involved in this, and that should make this like one of the best manga ever, shouldn't it? But it's not. It's nowhere close. There are issues with this series, enormous issues. I'll get into them. So first of all, I don't even know where to begin describing the plot. The best place to start with, I guess, is that it's set in the Andromeda Galaxy, if you hadn't guessed that from the title. It takes place on a planet called Astrius. We see that there's, a wedding and a coronation that's about to begin. And basically, without spoiling too much, I'll just simply say robot invasion. That's kind of, what the gist of the story is. First of all, when I go talk about this series, the biggest issue, of course, is the story. So before I go into the issues with the story, let me just simply say, the series looks really good. Now, it's as detailed and as crisp and clean and all that as Tetera. What it's missing from Tetera is the fact that Tetera, there was some really innovative, creative use of panel arrangement. Something that, Kaiko doesn't really do much of here. She kind of goes more for the kind of standard kind of boxed kind of look. She still, every so often, she does something creative, but overall, it's like she takes the kind of panel arrangement much more kind of normally in this series. But her artwork is still lovely. I mean, let me just pop up a scene here. It's still that kind of gorgeous looking, kind of lots of very nice use of black detailed hair, detailed looking characters. It's still a beautiful series. So, when I say that the biggest issue is the story, I really mean that. Now, I've not read anything by Ryu Mitsushi before, but based on this, it kind of makes me skeptical of his other works. Now, he's very well respected as a novelist. I mean, he's written, one of the great science fiction novels. He's written lots of other stuff. So it amazes me that he made such a weird, sloppy kind of story for this. Basically, my issues with this story, the first volume, I was bored out of my mind, and the reason for that was because of the fact, first of all the characters are kind of archetypes. None of them are really developed, or there's no reason to care about them. Characters are introduced, and it just feels like, that the author is saying, okay, look, this character here is like a big, strong warrior, care about him. Look, this is an old, mysterious guy who, is able to cure things almost mystically, care about him. But the characters don't get any real kind of development. And it just feels like the plot is just kind of moving on. It's kind of like beyond the characters. Like, the plot itself is fairly standard. It's robot invasion. There's no real kind of... One of the things I loved most about Tetera was that it had a lot of fascinating ideas. Even if the characters themselves weren't particularly great, they fulfilled their purpose. Each one had a role. In this series, characters introduced, kind of forgotten about a lot of them, underdeveloped. That's not to say that it's complete waste of time. I mean, Volume 2 and Volume 3... they're okay. Volume 1 I hated. I just found it the biggest bore. But Volume 2 and Volume 3, they were like, I could get through them, but it just wasn't particularly gripping. It wasn't particularly interesting. It plays out like big cliches, and what it reminds me of actually is it's like one of those old 60s science fiction movies. It's like it's trying to be greater than what it actually is, and it just didn't work for me. So it's not like I was disappointed by this series, because I came in knowing that it wasn't going to be particularly great. It's generally seen as like like Kaiko's one of her weakest works. Although considering in English, I think only Tetera and Andromeda stories are available, that's not really to say too much. All I knew is that lots of people, you know, who liked Tetera didn't buy Andromeda stories, and I think Andromeda stories was the reason that Vertical stopped licensing Kaiko works. They had a license to Tetera, and Tetera sold pretty well, and then they released Andromeda stories. That didn't sell well at all. It was a big disaster for them. So, you know, and I can see why people didn't buy it. I mean, first volume, I was bored out of my mind. If I had just bought that volume, I wouldn't have bought any more of the series. The second and third volume, yes, it improves, but it never gets it to the point where you actually give a damn. So overall, I'm gonna say that, you know, this series, the only reason you want this series is for two reasons. One, because it's a Kaiko work from the 1980s, you know, so it's, you know, important for that reason. And number two is because of the fact it's now out of print. It's been out of print since, I think, the 1st of July this year. So, you know, I've obviously, you know, like Amazon and Book Depository, they might say they have it, and they probably do have it. But once that stock runs out, you know, there's going to be no more of them. So if you really want to get this series, get it now. These books, they might actually be worth something in the future, but I didn't like them at all. Now, talking about Vertical's treatment of them, basically it's the same as Tetera. Basically, you have your chip kit art, which isn't particularly great. You have the kind of pages themselves, which are nice and white, but have a lot of kind of page bleeding issues, etc., etc. Nice trim size. It's bigger than the standard manga, but it's only 200 pages, so it's just a little bit bigger than the standard manga volume in comparison to like the 300 pages of Tetera. So I don't really know what to say about this series. I mean, literally, I've only just finished reading the manga, and I've already started to forget the story and the characters and everything. Yeah, so those are the only two reasons you want to get it. Whether if you're a Kaiko enthusiast, you know, like, and also like a enthusiast on the works of that time, or if you're just interested in getting out of print manga, or manga that's gonna be out of print. Well, it is out of print now, but stocks probably are still there on Book Depository and Amazon. It's always tough, these reviews, you know, the reviews where I have to review something I don't like, just because I feel like I can't really describe it as well as I could manga that I did enjoy. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.